Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about True Lies, Season 1, Episode 11. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, I kind of figured like things weren't going to be 100% copacetic when we got introduced to Tucker. Obviously, he had his own thing going on, and it's like, okay, I know the perfect guy to bring in, and it's, he's asking Harry for help. Obviously, he goes to Omega Sector for help, but he knew specifically he had a link up with his old buddy, Harry. And so that comes with its own complication because him, Gibbs, and Tucker all have this interesting history where Tucker and Harry are tight, but Gibb doesn't feel the same way because of the whole CG thing. And it's like, well, what does the CG stand for? Conniption Gibson. Because one time Gibb lost his cool in a situation, and ever since then Tucker's kind of held it over his head. So sadly, Tucker's a bad influence on Harry. He makes Harry act kind of like your stereotypical jock. He doesn't really want to listen. It's just kind of like, once again, it's like, oh, you're like a hyped up teenager jock who just kind of does whatever wants to prove himself type of situation. It's like Tucker's kind of a very, very bad influence on Harry. And obviously at first Helen's thinking like, oh, it can't be that bad, but it didn't take too long before she kind of saw that. I mean, he's kind of a dick. I mean, the moment he was like, well, I mean, I don't know if it was supposed to be a compliment or whatever when he met Maria, being like, oh, I didn't know we had a modeling agency or something. So I'm like, okay, I could see that kind of taken as a compliment, but also it just felt like that was a little, I think it was supposed to be kind of, I interpreted it as a backhanded compliment of like, oh, you're beautiful, but it felt like it was taken away, like, but you're, it's like, oh, let's focus on the fact that you're a beautiful person instead of like, as a beautiful, aesthetically, instead of also talking about the fact is that you are an adept agent. I don't know, maybe it was meant to be like this flirtatious type of thing of I took it as a very backhanded compliment, but maybe that was just me. Obviously, even Luther, he's like, hey, yo, you must be supportive of her. So I think he was trying to get super I mean, cause we didn't really get much between Luther and Maria when it came to Tucker. Obviously, the main people who interacted with him were Helen, Gibb, and Harry. But anyway, Tucker ended up bringing this job about some stolen uranium, and now it's going to be sold to North Korea, and they had to get it back before it gets sold. And obviously, he kind of tries to take ownership of everything. He tries to run things. It's like, hey, instead of letting the video play out, it's like, I wonder, does Gibbs set up the videos and stuff like that, the rundowns? Cause we never really, I don't know if they ever really explained the videos. I wonder, does Gibb use a computer program that he programs to do that? So that might be why he takes even more charge of no, we let the video play because that's part of the process. I mean, it's always how they do their missions, but I also wonder, is Gibb directly responsible for putting those together? And once again, is it someone else's voice? Is it an automatic system that he has created, like an AI that reads off all the information and kind of lays out everything very succinctly and clearly. Maybe that's just me. I don't think they've ever really given an answer about those videos, but this episode made me kind of wonder for the first time more about that. But either way. At first, it seemed like Harry wasn't going to get sucked up into the way Tucker moves, because he was like, hey, I'm going to listen to Helen. Helen's telling me how to say this very specific phrase. What was it, in Romanian? I think she was saying how to say this particular phrase of don't worry, you got nothing to worry about, because they're trying to get this broker who could give them idea of where the uranium is being stored and before it gets sold and stuff. But Tucker convinced him hey, let's go in guns blazing because we're very good at what we do. Even though Gibb was no, we're going to wait. We're going to follow them because there's too many people here. And Harry let Tucker goading him by being oh, you're going soft. They go in guns blazing. Yeah, everything ultimately works out. Luckily, Maria and Luther were there to back them up, but still, he didn't listen to Gibbs. It's this is my operation. Because Tucker disrespects him, but just putting him, it's oh, you're the guy in the band. You're the man behind the chair. But it's that role is super important because he's the one that puts the operations together. He's the one that kind of oversees everything. He's the Overwatch of the team. And so it is completely disrespectful for Tucker because he's so busy going off doing his own thing for so long that because he kind of has no loyalty. He's which obviously we see really come up in this come up at near the end of the episode. But it's also like he doesn't really work with a team. He, as we saw at the beginning, he works on his own. Harry isn't like that. Harry's got an entire team that supports him and has his back. So, because we also learned about why Harry is so adamant about like following Tucker's flow, because he owes Tucker, because he's like, yo, all those years ago, 20 years ago, when there was an operation in Kuwait, he got left, like, he got boxed in like a dark market or a night market or something, and Tucker came back, disobeyed orders, came back and saved him, and instead of taking a promotion, he just left. It's like, and Harry feels responsible. It's like, this guy saved my life and threw away his entire career. But also shows you who he is. I mean, it's a combination of, yes, he is so prideful that he wouldn't just take the demotion. He just had to have things his way. But it's also a thing of, no, I did the right thing. Why should I be punished for it? But, you know, so I think if it's a little more honorable, and maybe that's just me reading too much, and I think you take that lump on the lip of like, right, I'll get the demotion, but that's also why Harry just feels like it's my fault. The guy saved my life. But because an antithesis of this episode is all about not talking about your feelings. It's, you know, it's kind of the guy thing where it's like, rather than like at no point, like Gibb kind of made his points about Tucker pretty clear, but Harry never like reciprocated and like actually talk things out with Gibbs. It's like, no, it's fine. He kept making excuses because like almost like we're dudes. We don't really need to talk about our feelings. Like, we all get it. It's jokes and everything, nothing to take too seriously. Because he tried to make a point that like, hey, Gibb is holding this thing that happened 20 years ago against like me and Tucker because we won this competition thing. But it's also, the fact is, it's not easy when you even have Tucker himself bringing up something from 20 years ago and trying to like dangling in front of Gibbs' face. So it's not like, Gibbs hasn't forgotten. It's like, neither has Tucker, and he uses that. And that's like any like person where it's like, you know, the stereotype of like, that jock who peaked in high school, all you ever do is like talk about the glory days. Tucker kind of has that going on this entire episode. It's like the Al Bundy thing with football. It's like, did I ever bring up that time I got 4 touchdowns in a single game? It's that type of thing. Like, Tucker's kind of go, yes, he's got the skills to back it up on like an Al Bundy, like he still can hold his own, but it's still like, the glory days. To be fair, he was doing that to kind of stroke Harry's ego, to lure Harry more and more, kind of push him away from the team, so it makes it a little easier to get Harry by himself and easier for the betrayal later on. I wasn't expecting the betrayal in that regard of like, I'm actually selling this uranium. Like, I got stolen, so I'm actually going to sell. I figured like he was basically going to like screw over Mega Sector, because it turns out like he's a kind of he's in a more private sector. Turns out the uranium he got is what he actually stole from so the people like he was beating up at the beginning, I think he actually and that's probably why he put on the mask or whatever, probably because that's related to the company he was working for, so he probably hid his identity. But it wasn't even like the North Koreans involved in this. He was like trying to sell it to the Iranians, so it's like, yeah. And basically telling Harry, like, you owe me, so, yeah, like, that's the only reason why, this is the reason why this is happening. I saved your life, and now you're saving my life, because if I don't make this deal, because I already got paid in advance, they're going to kill me. So, yeah, you owe me for this. And then later on, calling Harry ungrateful, and Harry's like, what? I'm stopping you from selling uranium, and I'm the asshole in this situation? It's like, yeah, it just showed you who Tucker was, that he was the selfish prick that he was. Also, he got done in because, hey, Harry's not alone. He's got an entire squad behind him. Obviously, Maria's still out front, like distracting the people from the original plan, but Luther came, and also so did Helen, because Helen had all the smoke for Tucker as well, because it's like, hey, he disrespecting people on the team. The fact of the matter is he's kind of a douchebag. He's also using up all the towels in our guest room because you made the unilateral decision of letting him stay. He's also giving very bad advice to my son, and because Harry didn't tell their son that he should talk to his friend who he was having issues with because of like the karate matches they had earlier on at the beginning of the episode, and because Jake is going further, like, because obviously Harry's teaching him some of his skills, and it puts Jake a little ahead of the other, so it caused some issues and resentment amongst that friendship. And also Tucker was making him double down, like, yeah, you don't need to be around a loser friend who can't accept, like, you know, it's like, right, you're me and your dad, but your dad, like, anytime he lost to me or whatever, that I'm faster than him or whatever, that it would prove that, hey, he gets the jokes, it's fine, it's, you know, it's like, jokes can only go so far before it, like, really gets under someone's skin, ergo, like the Gibbs situation. I also love that Helen didn't get to utilize it this episode, but we did get to see, like, against the practice dummy they had ready, she ended up, like, performing a kick of her own, so showing she's already ready to kind of toss that out at any point in time. But I did like, after calling out Tucker for all the bad stuff, she locked and loaded and went outside, and Gibbs looking like, oh, cool. I'm glad I'm not the only one in this team who actually hates Tucker. I mean, it doesn't hurt that he's also a bad guy, so, like, my hate is even more justified now. But, yeah. He's always saying, like, oh, I'm better than you, I'm faster than you, Harry. But the moment he started trash-talking Gib, he's like, oh, I thought your wife was the one that made you soft? It's Gib. It's like, yeah, Gib's the one that made you soft, and that pissed Harry off, because it's like, nah, Gib's a loyal, good friend. He's the lead. He helped put this team together. He keeps his team functioning as the well-oiled machine that we are. I'm not going to have you disrespect the guy who, as Gib reminded him, is like, who's had your back for the past 17, 18 years? Me. Whereas Tucker, it's like, you guys hadn't really, I mean, who knows how much they really interacted over this past 20 years. It's like, it is that old school, like, oh, we're living in our glory days type of thing. Because, like, it's probably like we were pretty tight back then, but it's like, yeah, Gib and me have been pretty tight. So, for the past 17, 18 years. Whereas, like, Tucker, it's like, we probably haven't seen him since he quit all those years ago, you know? But yeah, Harry took him down and is like, yo, I guess my kicks are are faster or whatever. It's like, yeah, it kind of felt good when he was like punching Tucker in the face. You're like, yeah. I was kind of hoping he, like, it's messed up, but I'm kind of like, he's such a dick. I'm like, I wish you, like, was able to kick his ass even harder. But that was a pretty well-deserved and appropriate level approach ass kicking, you know? So, and ultimately, Harry and Gib do talk. I do love that Helen had to threaten him. It was like, I will smother in your sleep. I can do that now. So, but ultimately, Gib already knew about what happened 20 years ago. And it's like, I get it. The guy had your back. He saved your life. I get that. But for him, it's like, what really rubbed me the wrong way. You and me, we were partners all throughout that summer training program. But it wasn't until we got to the finals, you abandoned me for Tucker. And then that's why I crashed the van or whatever, got the van stuck. And just having that, like, it was just like, man, felt like I was being let down by my friend. Like, we had built a rapport. We were a really good team. And for you to kind of abandon me like that, I was frustrated. And having Tucker, like, constantly reminding you over and over again about that was, I think that's why it cut even deeper. But for Harry, it's like, I chose Tucker over you because I was scared of, I felt like I was so self-reliant on you because I knew, like, what if I can't handle this on my own? So he was kind of scared. So he's like, you're, like, crashing that, you're getting the van stuck is the only reason why me and Tuck won, because I was scared, like, I'm not, like, you make me a better person, you make me a better agent. I was like, oh, that's really sweet. I was like, yo, like, you're my best friend, bro. And as Helen said, it's like your family too. So it was this really sweet moment of them kind of, like, fixing their rapport, you know, fixing things between them. And I love the parallels with everything with Luther, because Quinn, well, first and foremost, I love the introduction of the new tech. They did bring up that point later on of, like, should the explosive liquid really be in a sanitizer thing? Because, well, what if we confuse it with sanitizer? Like, I guess we should put it in a different bottle or something. It's like, yeah, we should. I mean, it luckily came through in the end because Harry had stashed some of it himself and forgotten about it. And that's how he was able to get out of that door that was kind of locked. I also forgot to talk about Tuck doing that effed up thing to Gib by putting Gib in a situation where the guy was attacking Gib because Tucker told the guy Gib was a top-class assassin that was coming to kill him. If you, like, hey, good cop, bad cop, I'm the good cop going to save you from Gib, the bad guy. But even then, like, Harry was like, yo, it's kind of messed up that you didn't fill Gib in on what was going on. But even then, Harry still fell to the wayside, being like, all right, we got the information we need, so it's all okay. It's like, it really wasn't. That was a very jacked up thing for Tucker to do. But anyway, going back to what I was bringing up before, Quinn told Luther to talk to Maria about something, and I thought, I was like, oh, is it going to be like a where they currently stand? I was like, is Quinn going to have an issue considering they used to date or whatever? And it turns out, at first you're like, oh, she does. Did she give him an ultimatum? Because I thought like, oh, I couldn't be partnered up with Maria anymore. So for him, it was a situation of, because he said like, hey, because of that, oh, like I'm avoid talking to you about stuff, which obviously is very much like Harry avoiding talking about stuff. Luther was like, yeah, Helen, can you check on Maria's to make sure everything's strapped up, everything's good? And it turns out, yeah, Quinn made this rule or whatever, and Maria's like, okay, and she constantly like would clown him about the entire episode. Oh no, should we really be here this close? It's like we're in the middle of battle. I mean, I guess that's the compartmentalizing that Maria's able to do, where it's like, no, I could joke about this while also being very dead serious about my job and still being very good at it. But yeah, we ultimately find out from Luther he made the whole thing up, because it's an awkward thing of Quinn wants to like them to all hang out, and it's like, oh, my current girlfriend with my ex-girlfriend, that's weird. So I guess he got panicked and didn't want to talk about the real thing, so he came up with some BS, which is also effed up, because now it made your girlfriend seem like a crazy person, where it's like, oh, you came up with a rules that you guys don't physically touch. And she's not thinking like that. It's like, it kind of, because even I was like, yeah, that's kind of like a red flag or something. Like, I get it. I mean, but like, it was never an issue, because they've been broken up for a couple years before him and Quinn had started dating, and they have this working relationship. And I think Quinn's not trying to come in between some of that. So we'll see if that ends up becoming a thing more and more later on or not. It hasn't really been an issue. There was just the reservations that Quinn had, her and Luther, when it was kind of like first started dating. That's the only like issue we've really come up to so far. Maria seems like she's happy for Luther and everything, but I'm sure maybe there's still some of that going on, but like something there, but maybe just her just being a friend and supportive and just trying to be professional. She's not really letting it get to her. She hasn't really shown that. So maybe it's just a thing of, hey, you moved on. I get it. Yeah, and so we'll have to see. We'll just have to wait and see. And once again, like, we know that she ended up getting that dog or whatever. So I don't know how that's all going to play. I'm interested whether they'll really lean into like the complicated drama of that or not, especially if they're hanging out later on. But yeah, I love that at the end of it, Helen and Maria, they're talking about like, oh, did you get Harry to talk about Gib? It's like, oh, did you get Luther to talk about his feelings? It's like, yeah, they're both works in progress at that point. I thought that was interesting. And also like oh yeah, like, let's go get coffee. It's like, oh yeah, no, there's a really good spot near my yoga place. And it's like, yeah, that was kind of the whole point that Harry was making. Like, oh yeah, guys kind of like, yeah, we kind of shrug it off. It's fine. It kind of being like, yeah, women like, will go get coffee after their yoga session, and that will be how they end up ultimately talking about, their feelings and stuff like that. So, but even going back to the Jake of it all, Harry's approach kind of worked too in this approach. He was like, right, like, kind of like, they are teenage boys, so it helps even more in their regard. I think it's still a thing of Helen's point of like talking stuff out is still very important, but it's kind of a lesson that it was kind of a combination, because Harry kind of took her advice and talked to Jake, but it was like, hey, like, when I'm talking to Jake, I'm giving him advice that I kind of would abide by. Is like, okay, teach your friend Andy that signature spin kick, and he did, and that's like made them pretty tight again. Because it's just kind of like a jealousy thing of like, oh man, you're like so much more skilled than me, because you're like getting further ahead. The spin kick thing. It was kind of a little jealousy, but it's like, no, we're good. So Helen's like, oh, it all worked out somewhat. So it's like, it's all good. It's all kosher on that front. So I thought that was just interesting. So it's a little bit of Harry adopting both of their approaches to like remedy Jake's situation. So I didn't even talk about it either, about Tucker ending up in the black site where he deserves to be after everything. But yeah, other than that, very interesting developments in this episode. Like I said, not quite the way I thought the episode was going to like fully develop in that regard. Like I said, I wasn't expecting him to be like a full bad guy. Figured he was going to use the team and kind of betray them, and I thought he'd still walk away like oh, I'm doing something for my squad and I'm kind of screwing you over, but we're all in the same team. It's like, no, he went full on bad guy. But either way, I mean, I guess it also comes out to that thing of like, right, people, like when you don't keep up with people, like people change all the time and they are very different people. And it's like, once again, you focus on the glory days and couldn't see Tucker for the person he had become. So, but either way, I'm really interested to ultimately see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good